Before I continue, I'd like to take a moment to say something I've said 1,000 times. Thank you. This video and the ones preceding it simply wouldn't have been possible without one important element. You. You, the viewer. You, the subscriber. You, the lurker. You, the fan. You have done something incredible for me as a person, and for that, I'd just like to thank you for being here. It's been a year since PGunnii started, and in just 1 year, I've garnered a simply massive amount of enthusiasm and support from all of you seriously fine people. So, for anyone who shared, liked, subscribed, commented, or viewed, this video is for you. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, there's not a lot of you, but it sure does feel like it. If you haven't seen my Crash 2 video, I would recommend checking that out right here. That's some OG PGunnii right there. OG PG. Not completely necessary, but provides a pretty substantial deal of context for this video. With that being said, oh, fuck! It really does come full circle now, doesn't it? Crash Bandicoot 3. Fond memories of me and my sister playing this together, going through the levels, accidentally deleting her save file because I didn't know what the fuck delete meant. And listen, if you're watching this, I'm still sorry about that. And I remember the serious hype that circulated around the game at the time. I mean, the press this fucking thing got was like crazy. Commercials, interviews, demos, action figures. By this point in time, Crash had already become a staple not only of PlayStation and Sony, but had become one of the greatest video game mascots ever, even having the biggest E3 attractions and calling for the center of attention. He ended up being right there with Sonic and Mario. At any other point, I could have shunned this for being big, bad old consumerism, except for the fact that Crash Bandicoot 3 kicked ass for reals anyways, so it was totally okay. How do I even start? Crash 3 basically took Crash to completely new heights while still retaining that same familiar gameplay. Where Crash 2 had to focus more on industrial and jungle levels, Crash 3's main draw was the super broad expansion into visiting different parts of the world at different time periods, which really did open up the art palette and allow for super various environments. Let's open this fucker up, pussies. Crash 3 started this thing where you would power on the game, the Naughty Dog logo would show up, but wait, it's a crate, and then boom! Out comes all the different characters and shit, and oh god, it's all leaking out! I mean, what a way to generate hype for a game you are literally about to play! It's still exciting to look at that little intro sequence, especially for the first time, and you see a fucking dinosaur, a plane, a motorcycle. Holy fuck, this is all in the game? Then the title shows up in this elaborate little animation and bitch slaps you through the TV set, and the voice does a thing and says, Crash Bandicoot. And there it is. I can still remember letting this whole sequence play out every time I started it up. Let me just gently tap the start button here. Our story starts out almost exactly as soon as Crash 2 ended. Basically, a thingy comes down and crashes into a thing, and a thing comes out, surprise, surprise. We're introduced to Uka Uka, the evil mask brother or something of Aku Aku. Do you see the, well, yeah. We move our sights over to Crash Bandicoot's house, which, by the way, was fucking mind-blowing to see the inside of as a kid. Holy fuck, it's the fucking board! And Aku Aku explains a bunch of things, and alright, moving on! Cortex gets scolded by Uka Uka for being a fucking loser and letting his shit get bodied by Crash. What's that thing moving around, like in the background? Okay, that thing is definitely getting closer. Alright, neither of you are aware of the fucking Michael Myers figure getting closer. Oh fuck. Oh fuck, it's a Slim Genie from Aladdin! Seriously, that scared the fuck out of us when we were watching it for the first time. Suspense-wise, that was on par with, well, anyways. Here we're introduced to our main hub, the Time Twister. Here we're able to walk around and directly teleport into the game's levels. Unlike Crash 2, we're actually able to get a glimpse into the different hubs and themes rather than just being surprised each time. Finally getting into the gameplay, Crash Bandicoot 3 did everything exactly as it should. Naughty Dog knew what they were doing. They knew what the fans wanted and they simply gave it to us. Take Crash 2's engine, leave the fundamentals the same, let's add some new gameplay modes and put them in China, Egypt, Game of Thrones, Jurassic Park, the goddamn future. It's hard to describe just how fulfilling Crash 3 was after playing Crash 2. Seamless, perhaps. Anyone familiar with Crash could jump right into this game and tackle yet another beast of a platformer. You guys remember. Jogging speed, jumping, spinning, all of it was back. But this time around, Naughty Dog had some new tricks up their sleeve. So fucking, yeah. Jogging, platforming, watch the holes, fuck that guy, crystals, gems, and all that jazz. The linear path levels are back and better than ever, except now the levels and worlds inside the game are a little bit more refined and polished and dynamic. Levels like those based in the Middle East take more turns and change the playing direction pretty often, unlike the previous game in which that was more of a rarity. This tiny yet welcome change makes the game feel just a little more fresh and characterizes the sequel as more of its own brand new game rather than simply an expansion pack. Alongside this, there are countless new, tiny additions and segments that pop up in the different themes that add lots of new challenges. The first examples that come to mind are the sections in Egypt and the future metropolis. In Egypt, there are these sections that have you trying to get through as far as possible before the water in the chamber rises before having to take refuge on nearby platforms. And the metropolis has segments with conveyor belts that have laser-guarded gates and enemies on the other side. Sections like those alone add a new layer of previously unseen challenge to Crash as a whole and really make this entry stand out on its own and makes it incredibly memorable. And that's just the stages where you walk. One of the main selling points of Crash 3 was one of the most interesting changes to the game: level types. In this game, we're not just jogging around anymore. All that shit you saw in the title sequence actually exists, and this is that part of the video where I shit my pants in pure excitement. The first variant we're introduced to happens right in the second level of the game, and where? Scuba diving. Let me just repeat that a little bit. Crash Bandicoot gets into fucking scuba gear, and now we can actually swim underwater with, like, sharks and shit. The level layout and formula has been completely adapted to be underwater, and very intuitively, I might add. We lightly swim by tilting the analog stick around and can kick our feet with X, allowing us to maneuver around the level pretty easily while still feeling the substantial weight of Crash himself. The adjustment to being in the water from land is actually believable, as we can feel the slower, slightly impeded movements in our protagonist. We also still have our spin move, which looks just awfully hilarious on Crash underwater. The spin move also has the added bonus of dashing us forward a smidgen, allowing us to time attacks on enemies easily and to quickly take out groups of crates. We're also introduced to another weird but fun as fuck segment in the game, the fucking chicken head? Yeah, so at some point during these levels, we get these segments where Crash gets to pilot this weird underwater jet submarine chicken head. Wow, those are missiles! With this thing, we get to move around a lot faster and easier, we get the sit dash move, and we can just take everyone out with fucking missiles. It also really just sounds cool too. Now, just looking at this, you'd think it's overpowered, but if you're not careful, it's actually pretty easy to lose, and that can be pretty detrimental if you're trying to get all of the crates, since some will be hidden behind this little coral thingy. Speaking of which, that's one of the more subtle underlying factors about Crash Bandicoot as a whole, and it's something I noticed has an even bigger presence in Crash 3. The difficulty gets more and more gradual as the game goes on. There's not really any one level that sees a huge shift or spike. Each level simply amps it up just a little more. Every time we think we know the game, we get introduced to a new enemy or segment or type of obstacle, and we're back to square one. If you're anything like me, you can end up getting pretty cocky in your gameplay, which leads the game to slapping your shit and sitting you back down in your seat. This game knows exactly what it's doing to you, and I hate it. The next thing we encounter directly after the scuba diving is actually a bit of a callback to Crash 2, except there's something different. Imagine being like 6 or 7 and super into Crash Bandicoot and being met with this. Okay, rewind. Crash smashes his face into the pavement as Coco comes from fucking nowhere and jumps into the level. Crash Bandicoot 3 sees us playing as Coco Bandicoot. Not only that, but holy shit, fuck the bear, we're on a tiger, dude! In the middle of Imperial China. Oh yeah, oh, I like this a lot. So, we're back to riding on baby-sized dangerous animals once again, and it feels just as good as it did in the previous game. It's actually pretty fun to see one of these levels take place in a setting that isn't snow, once again showing a clear connection and divide to the previous installment. Oh god! This doesn't mean Crash gets the short end of the stick though. In fact, later on in the game, we get one of the more iconic segments in Crash 3 where we legit get to ride on a dinosaur. Crash riding on a dinosaur. It doesn't last super long, but seriously, this is one of the coolest fucking things in the entire game, and for as brief as this little segment is, it's just so memorable. It definitely looked and played as if it were Naughty Dog's answer to Yoshi. This didn't come nearly as close in hype to the next thing though. Flashback to Crash 2. Oh man, we get to surf. Oh man, we get to ride in a polar bear. Jetpacks, please. stand back and witness the glory that is Crash Bandicoot riding on a motorcycle with glasses and a leather jacket. This was basically the image of Crash 3, and really goes to show the series' shift in tone and humor, and really symbolizes just how far we've come from a scared little rodent to a badass level 72. I'd like to point out that this was the only time in history where being a complete edgelord was this acceptable. The motorcycle levels consist of actual races with AI, where in order to get the crystal, we have to come first. Along the way, we get to go off ramps, speed boosts, avoid the police, and kick fucking ass. Crates are also in these, which means we have both gems and the crystals to collect. So, if you really wanted to go for both at once, you would have to make sure you're hitting every crate in the level as they show up, as well as work your way ahead of the cars, which actually break the fucking rules. So not only is the actual concept of it super aesthetically pleasing, but it's also a fun and challenging concept. Video games are truly the highest art form. Alongside these major game level types, we also have shit like the flying levels, which have a version for both Crash and Coco, and see them taking down blimps or airplanes. We also have the return of and the bosses. The bosses are back once again, and all of them are actually callbacks and more or less twists of their previous iterations. My favorites include Engine, which actually sees us playing as Coco, flying through space in a ridiculous battle with lasers and shit, and we're like flying on the moon and he has a gun, but then we defeat him and then all of a sudden he comes back and flies into like deeper space, and the tiger and green lasers and fucking get away with that trapezoid bullshit! Entropy is also fun to fight, since it really requires that you flex your platforming muscles somewhat so you can avoid his time beams that fucking disintegrate you into atoms.
It's time to stop!
And features just the nicest set design. There's something a little special about defeating the bosses now though, and here's where shit gets real. Each boss drops a pickup that grants you brand new abilities. Yeah, abilities. Double jumping, which I still just slide jump. Super body slam. The super spin, which allows you to jump and then spin mid-air to get some hang time and access different areas, and then we get the fruit bazooka. As in Crash just legit gets a Wumpa Fruit RPG, which you can totally use to take out enemies and snipe hard-to-reach objects. All of these superpowers open up the gameplay to a larger amount of variation and gradually introduce new concepts as the game goes on. One of the bigger game changers here actually comes after the game supposedly ends. Defeating Cortex and Uka Uka nets you the sprinting ability, which allows you to run faster through the levels, which greatly aids us in the time trials. Oh yeah, if some of the levels weren't hard enough, we get to channel our inner Cosmo and speedrun the levels after we finish them for the first time. Once you've collected a level's crystal and tried to re-enter, you'll notice this Lego clock sitting right at the beginning. Touching it enables time trial mode, and from that point you gotta start hauling ass to fuck to the finish line. Some crates at this point turn into yellow time crates, numbered on how many precious seconds they can save you. I never really was too interested in that whole thing when I was a kid, but now that I'm older and have literally spent entire days watching AGDQ runs, the appeal is very strong. It also adds a new tangible level of replayability as you desperately try to find as many shortcuts as you can to get the best times. These also serve a practical purpose for the game. Remember how we had to collect gems and crystals? You still do, each and every one. And now we have to collect the relics as well if you want that secret ending. Fuck. It's like the game keeps finding ways to keep me hopelessly sucked in 18 years later. By the way, I'd like to also note that Naughty Dog once again kept up their consistent work on their art direction. It's pretty stunning to know that Crash 3 only released a single year after the second game, yet the amount of new ideas, concepts, and art all feel like they were the result of a 3-year dev cycle. The game features completely new assets, and the art clearly draws inspiration from their respective cultures from around the world, including architecture and geography, while keeping the art style itself very much in line with that of Crash's universe. Going through the game, we can also see how they used the same level designs in different ways, either by changing the lighting or time of day. You can usually tell how hard a level's going to be when it's nighttime, then they're not fucking around anymore. The art used in this series has always been some of my favorites. Even just glancing over the concept art for the game, the art is rich and has an almost surreal-like quality to it, really giving us a good sense of the game's personality. After I released Crash 2, a few viewers pointed out something that made me very happy, and that is none other than Josh Mansell and his SoundCloud. For those who might not know, this guy is responsible for the sounds of my very own childhood and has actually released full-quality instrumentals of the Crash music on SoundCloud for the public to hear. Now, as it would logically follow, the game's compositions are once again simply fantastic and accompanies the art, like, spiritually. I don't even know how to explain that. It's like fucking bread and butter. It's a match made in heaven. The familiar synths, the vibraphone, and the strange techno-driven sounds have been given pretty interesting twists depending on where you are. The medieval times have violins. The future has that scary Doctor Who theremin. And Egypt still has the bangingest tune in the whole dang game. I mean, I don't even have to explain this to you guys. So, dear Mr. Josh Mansell, if you're out there somewhere watching this somehow for some godforsaken reason, then I want to tell you thanks. Thanks for everything. Thinking about all the different level types and all the different environments and layouts and music and sounds reminds me of the pure shock and awe that me and my siblings sat through as we laid eyes on all this for the first time. Booting up the game and seeing all that shit just blew our minds, and we were glued to our small CRT. Growing up in that time, it was almost inevitable that something like Crash could affect me so profoundly. As I said previously, he was more or less an idol for me personally. Someone I could look up to. So unapologetically his own goofy, cartoonish self. It's inspiring for someone who grew up afraid to be themselves, who was called weird or different. It's strange to realize the pure cultural significance that Crash had accumulated. That all over the world, without me even ever being able to comprehend it, Crash was doing the same for players everywhere. Talking with some of you made me realize just how important he is. Not just to me personally, but to an entire generation. And even though everyone's grown up to play all these different games and develop our own tastes, I feel as if we're all connected. We all had the same influence. Little did I know that one day I'd be doing a YouTube series where I finally got to talk about this character that I held in my heart all these years. This one character that has had such a profound effect on me. That someday those games and games like his would inspire an entire generation of people, and it would inspire me to do something I love, and maybe in some small way to give back to him. To give back to the people who brought him to life, and in doing so, to connect to others whose interests were sparked in the same manner. I guess some things just stick with you forever. Thanks for watching PGunnii. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's PGunnii here. Thanks so much for watching this video. It's been a long time since my last one, but it won't be a long time for the next ones. I'm back in full force, back in full swing. Expect more from me. If you like the video, maybe, think about pressing the like button, or even maybe pressing the subscribe button, because that helps a lot, There's also a few things. Well, first off, if you like this video, then maybe if you haven't seen the other ones, go fucking check those out, dude. The links are right here. Also, a link included in this end slate is a link to a music video that I directed for my friend Dohan. It's called Dohan in Your Ear. It's pretty short, but it's pretty sweet. I filmed it, edited it, put it together, made it look good, etc., etc. Go check it out. It's a barrel of fun. It's also pretty also fuego, if I do say so myself. But yeah, so thanks so much for your PGunnii. It's been a long time since the channel started, and I couldn't have done it without any of the people in the subscribe box. The people who pressed the button. You guys really make this whole thing possible for me, and it's just been wonderful connecting with all of you. And I hope that I see an entire new year of new people, new faces, seeing new things, doing new things, seeing what else I could do with this whole thing, because I'd love to see what else could happen. Let me know what you guys thought, please. Feedback helps a lot, because I don't want to just be alone here. So yeah, anyways, Oh, also, I actually also have a Twitter, and you should follow it, because if you want updates on stuff that I do or things that are happening in the editing process, go check it out, because it's actually pretty cool. I upload a lot of photos about, the timelines and sometimes I'm funny. If you think I'm funny, maybe you'll like my Twitter too. Go check it out, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm not so funny after all.